So always wear a helmet. I'm going to tell you about my experience of not wearing a helmet. Saturday the 13th of July 2024, I was on my electric scooter scootering from the centre of Brighton to Brighton Marina, which is just under 2 miles. It was a Saturday afternoon, about 2:30. Beautifully sunny afternoon. There were lots of people out by the beach. I remember that. I remember leaving Brighton and then waking up in A&E in Brighton Hospital, Royal Sussex. So yeah, I don't really have a memory of what happened. I have some kind of false memory of what happened. There definitely did not happen. Was the feeling or the impression I had that I had been with neighbours of mine on the beach drinking beer, that I had got on my scooter, scootered across Madeira Drive to a hot dog stand. There is no hot dog stand on Madeira Drive in Brighton. I remember the sensation, I falsely remember the sensation of the handlebars of my scooter moving in and down. And I remember having a slow motion thought that probably is true. It went, "This isn't going to end well." So whatever happened must have happened in a split second, but I certainly remember it as slow-mo. This isn't going to end well. So I woke up in A&E, probably a couple of hours later, taken there by ambulance. Apparently there were witnesses to whatever happened, and an ambulance arrived on scene within 4 minutes. The injuries that I sustained were bleed on the brain, so that's where blood happens between your brain tissue and skull. Pretty serious stuff. I broke my shoulder in 3 places. I essentially landed on the right side of my body, so right side of my head. I had to have 5 stitches in the right side of my head. I had bruises and I had cuts and scabs along the right side of my body for a couple of months, I think. As a result of the brain injury, I got double vision, which was initially complete double vision. I was closing one eye all the time in order to be able to see properly. I couldn't walk. I certainly couldn't climb stairs. I live somewhere that's got 2 sets of stairs on 3 levels, so I had to move in with my partner for 10 weeks because I couldn't cope with the stairs. So yeah, as a result of breaking my shoulder, my right shoulder in 3 places, I got a frozen shoulder. I had to do 2 or 3 months of physiotherapy exercises, 3 lots of half an hour every single day. So that's an hour and a half every single day to be able to move my right arm again. I couldn't laugh. I couldn't cough without pain. I couldn't walk very easily. What else? Yeah, I couldn't shower on my own, and I couldn't dress myself very easily. And I had to wear stuff that I could put each arm into rather than go over my head. So fortunately the accident was in the summer. And as a result of having a brain injury, I never remember what it's called, multifocal traumatic subarachnoid hemorrhage. I remembered what it was called. As a result of that brain injury, I had to inform the DVLA, who then revoked my driving licence, which was pretty painful. I had to put my physical driving licence in an envelope and post it back to the DVLA. I kissed it on both sides before putting it in the envelope, sealing it and posting it back. I posted it back September last year, and it was quite a journey getting my driving licence back. But as you can see, I am car camping again. I'm in Portland in Dorset, where I slept last night, so all is well again. But it was a rocky ride trying to get that back. So to go a bit more in depth into that rocky ride with trying to retrieve my driving licence, I reported my head injury to the DVLA via email, sending them a completed B1 form. I found the questions on that form so confusing that it had taken me ages to fill in. 2 or 3 weeks later, the DVLA wrote to me asking me to fill in another form. That form looked almost identical, but the DVLA letter said that the form will look similar to the previous one, but I would still need to fill it in. So I filled it in and I sent it straight off. 2 or 3 weeks after that, the DVLA wrote to me apologising that they'd sent me the wrong form. They enclosed another form for me to complete, asking me to return it in the envelope provided. There was no envelope provided. So this next form was a V1. It had a box to tick if I had double vision. My partner suggested that I tick the box and then tick again below. So it was then, towards the end of September 2024, that the DVLA wrote to me asking me to send my driving licence back. The letter stated that once I had proof from my clinician that I met certain criteria, I could reapply for my driving licence. Towards the end of January 2025, I received from the consultant at Sussex Eye Hospital her completed forms for the DVLA confirming that she was happy for me to resume driving. I immediately filled out the hefty DVLA D1 driving licence application form. 2 months later, towards the end of March 2025, having heard nothing, I rang the DVLA. They said that they'd just written to me with 2 more forms to complete. The B1, again, that's a neurology/brain injury form, and a new one, an FEP1. That's a loss of consciousness/epilepsy/seizure form. Again, I filled the forms in straight away and I sent them straight back. In May 2025, I rang the DVLA. They said that the cause of the delay is that they have a massive backlog, and they emailed me with a link to a web page I could use so that I wouldn't need to keep ringing them. So now I could check my driving licence status at any time by entering my national insurance number, my driving licence number, and my postcode. And I'd be driving again all the sooner, they explained, because it's quicker to check your driving licence status via a web page than it is to wait for a letter through the post. Every May, my partner and I go to an event in East Sussex for dog lovers called Paws in the Park. And every year we sleep in my metal tent. Except 2025. Even though I'd reapplied in January, I still hadn't received my driving licence back. In May 2025, we actually tried sleeping at the event in my partner's Ford Fiesta. I'll leave you to guess whether we'll ever be trying that again. At the end of June 2025, I rang the DVLA. They told me that they had written to my consultant, Mr. Etienne Moore, at the Royal Sussex County Hospital in Brighton to ask him whether he had any concerns about my ability to drive. Mr. Etienne Moore had been recorded as my consultant on my hospital discharge notes a year before. I had no memory of meeting this man. If I had met him, I certainly hadn't seen him since. How was he supposed to have concerns or otherwise about my ability to drive? He wouldn't even know who I was. And I'd already told the DVLA that I had had no contact, if any, with this man since my accident. I felt heartbroken by this news. I felt utterly deflated, too much so even to be angry. And I felt exhausted by the whole process. So that was the end of June. I waited a month before I rang the DVLA again at the end of July 2025, over a year since my accident by now. The DVLA told me that Mr. Etienne Moore had not responded to their letter. This news punched me hard. On the one hand, this was absolutely crushing. On the other hand, how could he respond? He wouldn't know who I was. Desperate by now, feeling trapped in this never-ending bureaucratic hell, I googled Mr. Etienne Moore and I spoke to his private secretary, who passed on the details of his NHS secretary. At this point, I was pretty thrown to discover that the NHS email address I acquired appeared to be from the Digestive Diseases Department. Digestive diseases? I later learnt from the head injury nurse specialist with whom I'd had a follow-up phone call a few months after my accident that the neurosurgery department had got a surgeon in digestive diseases to sign my discharge papers because my head injury was so minor that they didn't need a neurosurgeon to sign me off. At the beginning of August 2025, after jumping through several more hoops, I persuaded the DVLA to contact my GP instead of the consultant in digestive diseases, even though I hadn't needed to see my GP either about anything related to my accident. At the end of August, angry that the DVLA had now stolen the whole of the summer from me, I rang them again. They put me on callback, but they didn't call me back all day. I rang the DVLA the following day too, and I received no callback all day. My sister had casually asked me whether the DVLA has a Facebook page, so I'd googled whether there were any DVLA Medical Department Facebook support groups. There were so many, and they were full of angry people waiting endlessly for the return of their driving licences. I was a bit nervous of spending too much time looking at the posts in the groups in case it was all too awful. But one post had stuck out. The post said to email your MP and copy in Tim Burton, the head of the DVLA Medical Department, and you'll get your driving licence in the post the next day. So, on the first day of September 2025, I wrote to my MP and I copied in Tim Burton. Dear Mr. Ward, on Saturday 13 July 2024, I had an accident on Madeira Drive in Brighton. I incurred a head injury and was taken to A&E, where I was diagnosed with a multifocal traumatic subarachnoid hemorrhage. My discharge notes specified that I should notify the DVLA Medical Department, which I did. The DVLA subsequently revoked my driving licence pending their inquiries. There are two aspects of my injuries that might have affected my ability to drive. One, I incurred some double vision. In January 2025, the consultant at Sussex Eye Hospital, Mrs. Victoria Barrett, filled out forms for the DVLA, ensuring them that I have no visual impairment that might affect my ability to drive. 2. A 30-second loss of consciousness recorded by the ambulance team who arrived at the scene of the accident 4 minutes after they were called by a witness. Briefly losing consciousness was a direct effect of hitting my head on the ground. There has been no repeat instance of this, no knock-on effects, nothing remotely connected with stroke or epilepsy. Once Sussex Eye Hospital had cleared me to drive in January, I expected the immediate return of my driving licence. The DVLA, however, informed me that they had a backlog and to please bear with us. At the end of June 2025, I received a letter from the DVLA informing me that they had written to Mr. Etienne Moore at the Royal Sussex County Hospital asking whether he has any concerns about my ability to drive. Mr. Etienne Moore is a consultant in digestive diseases. He signed my discharge notes in July 2024 because my head injury was considered so mild, I'm quoting head injury nurse specialist Michelle East here, that a consultant in neurosurgery wasn't needed. I had already filled out one of a series of forms for the DVLA, informing them that I had had no contact with Mr. Etienne Moore since my discharge in July 2024. Indeed, as it transpired, Mr. Moore was so nonplussed by the communication from the DVLA that he ignored it. I discovered this a month later, further delaying the return of my driving licence. By this point, I was feeling quite desperate and asked the DVLA whether my GP could fill out the next form instead of the digestive conditions consultant. The DVLA agreed and wrote to my GP with a form to fill in, which my GP completed and sent back to the DVLA at the beginning of August. I requested a copy of the response from my GP, which I received. They confirmed that I hadn't needed any treatment from them at any point. On Thursday last week, I rang the DVLA in the morning and was put on callback. I didn't receive a callback all day. I tried again the following day, ringing at 8 a.m. this time. Again, I waited all day and received no callback. You don't have to look far online in forums or other online spaces to realise that there is a huge amount of very justifiable anger and frustration from people who are also caught up in this chaotic system that is not fit for purpose, and to hear about the consequent impact it has had on people's lives, just as it has been impacting mine for over a year. I work as a complementary therapist in people's homes. I have been turning down clients as I cannot carry my therapy equipment on public transport. I am frequently reliant on lifts from my partner who lives some distance away in a semi-rural location. My parents are in their 90s with deteriorating health. They live a 4-hour drive away. I need to be able to get to them without delay in an emergency, day or night. I told the DVLA this in March. They said they would make a note. I have been patient with this inscrutable system and its backlog for well over a year, and it is still dragging on. I was signed off with a clean bill of health by the ophthalmologists at Sussex Eye Hospital on 22 January. I was then informed by the DVLA that I could now reapply for my licence, which I did immediately on 31 January. It is now September, a full 7 months later, and there is still no sign that my driving licence will be returned to me. I don't think this is acceptable by any stretch of the imagination. There is no justification for the DVLA to keep telling people to please bear with them. This affects people's lives. Even though my injuries were fortunately quite limited, I felt it was important to do the right thing and inform the DVLA as advised by the hospital. However, this system is not a way to encourage people to do the right thing and be responsible citizens. They are penalising responsible behaviour by taking away people's licences for far longer than is necessary, especially for minor injuries with short-term effects, and causing them incredible inconvenience and frustration. Given that it's hardly a state secret that this process is painfully slow and badly run, I think you can be pretty confident that increasingly people will decide that it is not worth the risk of informing the DVLA about their medical conditions. Is this something the DVLA considers a fitting outcome in its efforts to improve safety on our roads? Please will you intervene to help me retrieve my driving licence from this tortuous system? I am copying in Tim Burton, Head of Drivers Medical at the DVLA. Many thanks for your assistance with this. Helen Natasha Moore. The following week, on the Tuesday, there were 2 brown envelopes for me in my porch, one big, one small. They were from the DVLA, and I was terrified. Every time I thought about opening them, I got so nervous I couldn't do it. The email to my MP had felt like my last hope, and I couldn't cope with the thought of that last hope being crushed. But I was due to go to Austria on holiday on the Friday that week, so I couldn't cope with going on holiday and not knowing what was in the envelopes either. My partner was staying over on the Thursday, so we could leave for holiday early the next day. I asked her to open the envelopes for me whilst I hid in the bedroom. I asked her not to react, just to open each envelope in turn, take it in, then to calmly come and tell me. After a couple of minutes, she knocked on the bedroom door. She started reading in a monotone, giving nothing away. I couldn't take it in at all. She then placed the contents of the smaller envelope on the bed. It took looking down to see my driving licence there for me to register that it was good news, and I sat down on the bed and cried. The letter was dated the 2nd day of September. When I checked the web page that evening, I screamed. So the following week, I was on holiday in Austria. On my birthday, at breakfast, I'd had 3 glasses of fizz and at least 3 strong coffees when the DVLA rang me. I was a tad squiffy and hyper, and I said to them it was my birthday and that I was in Austria, but I was curious about why they were ringing. They said they were just checking that I had received my driving licence. Well, yes, I had. So I had a pretty trippy birthday breakfast in which the DVLA rang me. They rang me, and they wished me a happy birthday and a lovely holiday.